Hello, 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 folks. This is Josh Mundy, and we are live with Podcast for All Seasons. Today's episode is going to be Season 4, Episode 2. With me, as always, is my co-host, Eric Joseph. And today, we're going to be talking about, we wanted to do a little bit of a roundup. We had a few little plans, didn't quite pan out to do something a little different today. But we're going to do something that's not quite what we typically do, which is a TV show roundup. But we're going to be talking about something that's usually on the minds and thoughts of people who are watching DC's, or should I say Warner Brothers, CW's DC on TV. And the question is, well, what's the best show right now? And more specifically, of the ones that we've seen, we might throw Gotham in there as well. But really, what's the best one that is airing currently? Not what has been the best season, but right now what's doing the best. And I'm going to let Eric start us off and kind of give us a synopsis of some of the things that he's liked and disliked about the current season, and get into what's making his favorite. What's going on, Eric?
Hi, Josh, and hi to everyone listening. It's been quite an interesting weekend, I'll say that. Not necessarily anything I have to mention on this podcast. It seemed like yesterday I did attend a small con in the Detroit area, Ypsilanti Comic Con, which was fun. I popped in for a few hours, but as for everything else, it's like one of those days when everything that could go wrong did go wrong, including running out of gas on the freeway. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
Amongst other things, like having coffee spilled on my Green Arrow costume. But luckily, coffee just bounces off pleather, I guess. So there wasn't much cleanup needed. Had it been grape juice, though, heads would have rolled.
No, it has nothing to do with pleather. It's coffee bounces off of justice. That's what happened there.
Yeah, you can't fail. I mean, I guess someone failed this city, but I mean, when you're protecting the streets of Star City or wherever, I mean, you can't be stymied by having hot drinks spill on you. So you just have to, I mean, being stain-proof is more important than being bulletproof, right? Anyway, moving on. And if anyone's wondering, I tend to use cosplay pics as my recent default photos here on these shows. The look I went. This picture was from Mega XP's Blood Bash back in February. It was a look inspired by Papa Emeritus III from the band Ghost. So be sure to check them out. Great music from those guys. Anyway, as Josh said, we're going to be talking DC TV for a bit of the show, and toward the end, we're going to give our Justice League trailer reactions. It's not our main topic because, I mean, it's a 2-minute trailer. We're not the kind of guys who are going to talk for an hour or two about 2 minutes of footage, especially when there's really not much plot to speak of as of yet. But, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, especially since a lot of people who are going to be watching or listening to this are going to be doing it through DCComicsNews.com. So anyway, as Josh pretty much said, we're not rating the DC TV shows as, to this point. We're just talking about the current season and what's the best, because personally, I think my favorite show overall is Arrow. I just seem to have most attachment to it and the characters. And, well, I spent the money to get the Season 5 Green Arrow suit, which is pretty screen accurate for those who have actually seen it. But I to be objective, I've admitted in the past that, the previous 2 years, The Flash had been the best DC TV show for those seasons, 2014 through 2015 and 2015 through 2016. But my answer is going to be different for the season 2016 through 17. So, but shows we're counting here. Yes, we're counting Gotham. I don't want to limit it to just the CW, but of course we're We're talking Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, Gotham, even Lucifer. We can't count iZombie, which is unfortunate because longtime listeners of the show know how much I love iZombie, but their season doesn't kick off until April 4th. But I mean, had we been talking about that, that probably would have easily been near the top of the list because iZombie is, I mean, although I mean it's Vertigo, it's consistently one of the DC TV shows. They never really have a bad episode to speak of. That's a big compliment I can give them. But I guess we're not going to include Powerless because I don't watch it. I don't think Josh watches it. Does anyone listening to this show watch it? I don't know. That's just, it's hard to fathom that NBC would like that more than something like Constantine. I really don't get it. It's not to go off on a rant here, channeling Dennis Miller there, but it's just funny how it was originally a show about insurance adjusters, and then they completely reshot the pilot, changed the direction of the show, so they could try to get people to watch by having that Batman thing in there, like, oh, it's Wayne Industries, Wayne Security, R&D. There's no way Batman's ever going to show up, and you know it. They're just it's just a cheap ploy to get viewers, and it's. I made a joke on Facebook recently. Why are certain DC shows more popular than others? Look at these great mysteries: The Flash, who is Savitar; Arrow, who is Prometheus; Powerless, who pooped in Van's office. I mean, it's really ridiculous, and it's kind of funny if anyone out there watches DC All Access throughout the week on the DC YouTube channel. On Mondays they do their hashtag DC TV episodes, but they don't really cover every episode that's airing in the week. They try and cram, the finer points into 5 minutes. But lately they've really been pushing Powerless hard, even on weeks when something way more important would be happening on Flash and Arrow. And that's what put me off. Because I think it was earlier, in the week, this past Monday, when I think they decided to forego talking about what was happening on Arrow, and they had 2 stars from Powerless. And yeah, it was uncovering the great mystery of who pooped in Van's office, and it's just it's downright silly. I mean, it makes Teen Titans Go look like Downton Abbey. I mean, were you gonna say something there, Josh?
Yeah, I was going to mention that it's not uncommon, not only for programs to have heavy advertising for failing shows or shows that are not doing well on their own. I mean, obviously, if you turn to say HBO, you're always going to see stuff for their successful series because it's their money makers. But you're going to see them push a lot of stuff that is a lot less popular, like specifically Fox does this, ABC does this, NBC does this, and CW was pretty infamous for this. My wife watches a lot of CW shows. She tends to like their romantic dramas and things like that. And I would sit down and watch some of these shows with her, and they were always pushing shows that I didn't even realize were on the air. They were pushing Heart of Dixie in its like 5th season, and I was like, wow, this show's still on. I wasn't even aware of that. And it was like, but obviously they're targeting a certain audience, but they were just hammering commercial after commercial after commercial. And I was kind of thinking it's not to say that Supergirl wouldn't necessarily be a female oriented show, and obviously Arrow and shows like Supernatural, they get a fairly large female audience because it's full of manly men, and women like watching attractive guys, like guys like watching attractive women. But yeah, it's usually an indication that there's something how does the saying go? Is something amiss in Denmark or something like that? It's just an indication that there's a bigger problem that they're not really talking about. Powerless is probably doing really poor in the ratings. I could pull it up and maybe take a look and see if that's actually true. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised.
Yeah, yeah. Please do while I carry on
Yeah,
this.
I'll do that while you continue your rant. But I mean, I get it. They don't want any product to fail, but it is one of those things where if the ratings, started out okay and it just absolutely hit the floor, they're going to try to recoup their losses as much as possible. That's what part of the retooling had to do with, obviously. Like I said, I haven't really given the show a chance yet. I think I've caught like half of an episode, and I'll say this: 30 Rock is one of my favorite comedies, and before I started watching it from the beginning, I had caught half of an episode here, half of an episode there, and I thought it was really ridiculous. And shows always kind of look stupid to an outsider that are comedies. I mean, I'm sure like if you watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and you just caught half of an episode and you had no idea who these characters were, you'd be like, what the hell is this show? It's just so ridiculous. But so, I mean, it definitely takes some initiation with certain comedies, and that's kind of the problem with non-formulaic or less formulaic shows. That's why shows like, Two and a Half Men, and specifically comedies, Two and a Half Men and Third Rock from the Sun, or We're Going Back in Time. These shows that every week you showed up, you knew exactly what you were going to get. You weren't getting any surprises. You didn't have to be initiated into some long tawdry chronology. It's one of the reasons that the cop procedural shows do so well, is because you could just show up and you don't have to know anything. So I mean, it could turn off some viewers, and it could, so I don't want to bash the show without having really given it a chance myself, but it reminded me of a show I really liked, which only ran for a couple seasons, called Better Off Ted, which I thought was a really, really funny, weird, quirky, odd comedy, and didn't really get a chance, and it had some really good stars in it, or some really good actors in it. But
yeah,
I digress. I mean, I think that the show could have an audience. I don't necessarily know that it is. What is it on NBC?
Yeah. There was something else I was gonna say before I moved on from Powerless while you were pulling up those ratings, but I just thought it was funny. Like, I think it was the week the pilot was going to air for Powerless on the DC TV episode that week on the YouTube channel date. It was kind of funny. They're like, how they tried to put a spin on something, like, what the great thing about this show is? You get to see the heroes you don't normally see, because get this, people, Crimson Fox is showing up, and it's
who cares? Who gives a shit?
Because okay, the Flash, Arrow, they give us the known heroes, but I mean, come on. You get unknowns on that show. Like, I mean, you got Wild Dog on Arrow. I mean, who really knew among the mainstream who Vibe was before the Flash? You already get this stuff on the CW. I mean, you have Vixen and Atom. Hell, you now got Citizen Steel as a series regular on Legends of Tomorrow. I mean, that's not something any of us in our life would, we thought would happen. But the reason they put that spin on Powerless is because you're not even going to get C-listers on that show. Crimson Fox is the best they can get. So, I mean, you have to try to put a, chocolate topping on it no matter how you can. But you got those ratings, Josh, so we can start talking the finer points.
Yeah, it looks like it actually was doing okay at the beginning. It had a 1.08 amongst the 18 to 49 demo, with a total of 3 million, basically just over 3 million views, almost 3.1 million views, which I guess they're saying for the time slot and for comedy specifically, that it's doing okay. It actually hasn't dropped very significantly. It's dropped down to about it dropped at the lowest was about 2.269 million, and then it went up actually again to about 2.375 million, which according to this website is almost a 5% increase. So It drops big in its second week. That's every friggin' show on the planet does that. It dropped almost 20%, 18.5% in its second episode. But then from there, the drops haven't been as big. So I'm not sure. I mean, it's getting a pretty strong lead in from some other shows that are fairly popular, but it doesn't seem as though that show is just going to get the enormous ratings. It's not surprising, but
Yeah, yeah. The fact is, those superhero shows are down in the ratings this year. So I mean, that those don't sound like bad numbers, but it's also on NBC, so it's really going to matter. I mean, Thursday night is a huge night for TV, and it also,
right.
that being on at, I think, in the 8:30 slot, it could benefit from being sandwiched between two more popular shows. I don't really watch NBC, so I don't know what is sandwiching it, but it's kind of like
It's
years
fighting
ago.
it's fighting another intro comedy called Superior Donuts, which is on CBS, and it's beating its pants off by far. It's got a 1.9 share, and it's got 10.5 million views. So
Yeah,
it's getting its butt beat significantly by like that. But it looks like most people who really crunch the numbers are saying that they're both off to a decent start, as far as
yeah,
those types of drama. I mean, it's getting better ratings than Riverdale. It's getting better ratings than Supernatural. I mean, that's to be expected because those shows are on the CW. But it's trailing. It's trailing a lot of other shows. It's trailing a lot of other shows that I would say are similar.
yeah. Because although the DC TV shows on the CW have been renewed across the board for next year, I mean, in the past few weeks, I mean, unfortunately, the Flash, Arrow, and others have been achieving series lows when it came to ratings, and I really do find that unfortunate. But I mean, who knows? There could be at least a few people who have the set on and they're off doing other things during, Power Ups and Slide. I was going to use a comparison that it reminds me of the latter seasons of King of the Hill when it was on between like maybe The Simpsons and Family Guy or something like that. And I always described it as a half-hour bathroom break. I would go do other things. I'd take the dog out while King of the Hill's running, and then I'd come back to watch Family Guy or whatever. But okay, moving on. We really got sidetracked, but it was about DC TV, so it's not like we're getting off topic too much. But okay, I'm gonna flat out say this season, my favorite show has been Arrow. I think the show it's really the best it's been since season 2. And I'm not someone who's going to dump on everything Arrow's done since season 2, but I think a lot of us will agree that season 2 might end up being this show's finest hour when it's all said and done. I mean, look back at Smallville, there were certain seasons that stood out. Maybe Josh will agree with me. Like you look seasons 2, 5. Season 9 was my personal favorite. I thought that was the strongest from start to finish, but like especially if you're binge watching on DVD, there are certain seasons of Smallville that you could watch in like a day or two just because they were so addictive. I mean, then there are other ones that were strong, like season 3. A lot of people hate season 4, and it did have its pitfalls, but Josh and I will also say for the overall story, Smallville season 4 was underappreciated, and plus you had Transference, which was one of the best episodes of the entire series. But yeah, Arrow 3, even though Oliver made some poor decisions toward the end with the League of Assassins, I did like season 3 for the most part, but season 4 is where they stumbled despite having that badass costume. I think they were fine, and then after the mid-season finale, it just hill quickly. This season, the mid-season held pretty well, but there's still some weird decisions they made. Like this week, if anyone out there follows my weekly DC TV roundups over at We Got This Covered, in the Arrow entry, this week was a pretty good episode for, and just such odd narrative decisions they make. It's like, okay, we accept this version of the Green Arrow kills. It's hard to do that without being someone who fires arrow from a bow. But Oliver had more severe methods in the flashback. He skinned a guy. I mean, superheroes. I can't even really picture the Punisher doing that.
No, I can picture the Punisher doing that, but not Arrow.
I mean, the Joker has skinned a guy before, but he's not a superhero. So I think, and we've still got 6-7 episodes before these shows wrap their seasons, but I think Arrow really is going to remain the best. The Flash is still up there, but for whatever reason, it's been as strong as the first two seasons. Next year they're finally not going to have an evil speedster as the bid. They've still had a lot of those great making comic books reality moments. Of course, when you add a mystery to it, I mean, pro wrestling does it all the time via who's under the mask mystery, or who's the mystery member of this faction. Apparently I'm breaking up. I'm going to unmute my mic and then. Am I sounding better now, Josh?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, so let me know. Josh can message me privately on the screen. But this is the magic of Google Hangouts, people. You know this by now. You don't always get what you want. Anyway, so where was I? But the who is Savitar, knowing someone's under the mask, it does add a bit of mystique and a reason to keep you coming back. Like, we've already unmasked Alchemy. Arrow has unmasked Prometheus, and we have one more unmasked coming with Vigilante. It's one of the simplest ways to get people coming back, just like a murder mystery. We're going to give a brief mention, but I mean, it's not a DC show, but Riverdale. It does have the teen drama aspect, but if you like Archie comics, there's a lot to like about the show, but at its core, it's got this murder mystery. And it's an easy way to keep us all coming back, because in those final few minutes of Riverdale, you know that there's going to be something having to do, there's going to be a clue. You really want to pay attention to your set. That's like what I've learned with iZombie. There's something is always going to happen in those final few minutes, no matter what. So yeah, Legends had a very parabolic season again. That's a show. It seems like what I've learned from its first two seasons, their first few episodes are strong. The last few episodes are strong. You might have a few in between, but there's also a lot of mediocrity and a lot of mundane in there. And I'm really getting pissed off with them doing the Bill and Ted style stuff of, look, let's just team up with a historical figure instead of, okay, if we're going back in time to the damn Stone Age or whatever, why aren't you bringing in Anthro? If we're going to the future, where are the Legion of Superheroes? Now, I'm not saying they won't do that in season 3, but where's Commandy? I mean, they've had Jonah Hex, but really, there are DC characters peppered throughout time. Why aren't you using them? Many weeks, it seems like if you took the heroes' names out of the script, you would never know it's a DC show. And that's what puts me off about Legends. But I watch it more or less for the most part just to keep up with the Arrowverse. Legends will probably never be a show I buy on DVD or Blu-ray. I'm sorry. Supergirl has had a fantastic um, second season. The first season was good, but I think there was just this real CW effect of where it's Supergirl's pretty much now on par with the Flash. It's really embracing its um, comic book roots. It's going just all out sci-fi. It really feels like a proud successor to Smallville. And as we all know, Superman family on TV. It's kind of like how Batman has had the hold on animation over the years. Superman has had on live action. I mean, we have the Adventures of Superman with George Reeves. Um, we had Superboy, late '80s, early '90s. Lois and Clark, to Smallville. Now Supergirl. I hope there isn't one I'm leaving out there. I think I nailed them all, but it's a great continuation of that legacy and still putting different spins on various villains, but more accurate to the comic books. Like I think this is, although he didn't have a bowler hat and was 2 feet tall, this version of Mixie, I think there was stuff they were able to do with it that they couldn't do before, just because technology hadn't caught up with what you could do with fifth dimensional imp. I mean, they had the costuming on Superboy. Go back to season 1 and seeing it, but that episode was really campy. Um, Gotham's been pretty strong. Not as good as season 2 because it did hit a few speed bumps, I think, but it did pick up, especially when they had the 3-episode arc with Jerome, which made the Blu-ray purchase worth it. I mean, I would certainly buy season 3 on Blu-ray just for the stuff with Jerome. But I mean, Gotham season 2 was the standard for Gotham, I'd say, but easily my least favorite show that I've been watching. Sometimes I'll skip it on certain weeks. Sometimes I can't even sit through a whole episode. Just the police procedural has been too. It's not what they should have done with a show like that. Pass it over to Josh. I think I've pretty much said my compliments and maybe a few criticisms of DC TV, but it's just kind of odd that Lucifer has a season 3 renewal now, and Gotham doesn't. Gotham has always been renewed in January, so I'm finding this peculiar. But Gotham is enduring a bit of hiatus. It's luckily coming back on April 24th, and so that means the season rather. Hopefully not the series, because I know they're not planning for a season finale over in that writer's room, because we have Ra's al Ghul being introduced soon, and Harley Quinn is supposed to be introduced in the finale in some capacity, and we'll have something great to do with whatever's planned for season 4. So Gotham will wrap in June, but I'm not doubting Gotham's going to get renewed, but I really think that it's going to be brought back as a mid-season show. We'll see, but I wouldn't doubt if they premiere Gotham in like January or something, and season 4 is 13 episodes or something like that. I think they've eventually done that with shows like Sleepy Hollow and a few others, where they just get truncated seasons around January. But I'm still sticking to my guns. Loyal listeners of our show know that from the start, I've said Gotham's going to get 3 to 5 seasons, and it's really looking like that. So although it's not, some of you, it might be your favorite DC TV show, but it's not always one of the stronger of the bunch, and it's unfortunately probably going to get foxed sooner rather than later. And I kind of lost my train of thought, so take over, Josh.
Alrighty. After Eric's incoherent rambling, no, I'm just joking. So Yeah, I would say that, we've kind of agreed for the most part, as far as, what we've tended to lean towards, as far as, our favorite show of a particular season and whatnot. But I don't know. Maybe it's just I like the more optimistic outlook of the
Oh, now I
Flash.
know. Now I know what I was going to say. Sorry to interrupt. At least if you're going to end Gotham, at least give it like a 6 episode final season, because it's not over. We at least have to get that flash forward at the end of Bruce putting on the costume. Whenever Gotham needs to have a definitive ending, so let it have that, Fox. Even if you are going to cancel at some point. Okay, go, Josh.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. It'd just be a little bit odd. What are you going to do with David Mazouz if you bring in a flash forward Batman and you're going to have this kid who's been in the show the entire season not be in the final one? I don't think they could age him up enough to make him Batman. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if it's just the optimism of the Flash that makes me like it a little bit more, but I would say that the Flash, although not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and yes, the mysterious speedster trope is kind of getting a little old, and I am happy that next season they're not going to have a mystery speedster. I mean, frankly, if you look at the rogues gallery of the Flash, aside from the ones that they've had on the show, none of them are speedsters, and I understand that they're not necessarily going to do an entire season about the Weather Wizard, but you could do something similar to what they did with, say, Captain Cold, where, he shows up a few episodes and, maybe not completely different from some of the things that they've done with the villains on Arrow, where they kind of go underground after a few episodes. They do one big thing, have a few machinations throughout the course of a season, and then and then try to have a big season finale. It's pretty formulaic, that is, and they've done that with the speedster ones. You could do that just as easily with I don't know, Boomerang, who they apparently are never going to bring back because of the Suicide Squad.
Actually, that just sprung to mind, because when you look at it, the show has already used a lot of the essential rogues, like Mirror Master, Captain Cold, Heatwave. They even had a version of the Top. But yeah, they've nailed. They had Captain Boomerang in the first crossover with Arrow and the Flash a couple of years back. But he's that version of Captain Boomerang they established as a very dangerous, badass guy, and I liked him better than the one in the Suicide Squad movie. But I think maybe now that there's been a lot of red tape cut between movie and TV at WB, because we're obviously going to have the Flash on TV, and it's going to be Barry Allen on the big screen and the small screen, even with different actors. So the guy who played Captain Boomerang on Arrow, I can't remember his name offhand, but he just posted a teaser on Twitter that he would be coming back, and it could be later this season, but who knows? This Captain Boomerang could be someone dangerous enough who maybe could be a big bad as part of season 4, or maybe they're going to unite the rogues as being this big overarching threat in season 4. Who knows? But I think they are kind of running around. Well, I'll say they're running out of the larger Flash rogues. I mean, it's going to be time to maybe start combing through your comic collection for hints. But they did hint that a proper Mirror Master was on an alternate Earth, because the Mirror Master they used on this show, I'm sorry, I was very disappointed having him be like this meta-human and just wearing a business suit. I want to see the Mirror Master with costume, the gun. That's the version we need. So
Yeah, I mean, alternate versions are what it is, and it's one of those things where they're going to always give us alternate versions. I mean, yes, you're not going to give us a comic book accurate Mr. Mixaplick, but it is what it is. I mean, I didn't particularly care for that version of Mirror Master either, but I didn't think the way that he used his powers was not that bad. But Getting back to from Eric's incessant interruptions. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, I would just say the Flash tends to seem to me this season specifically my favorite of the current DC TV shows, and Arrow's a close second. I think that they have redeemed themselves after some missteps in the last few seasons. I think that they've just kind of gotten back to formula, whether it be introducing the new team and whatnot, and kind of changing things up. I was a little disappointed when, like, say for example, the character of Roy left. I thought that he was just starting to gel with the team in a cool way, and obviously he's a young, agile guy. He came across to me as Arrow Junior, which is kind of the idea. It was shocking to me when they decided to get rid of him as quickly as they did, especially. But so they're kind of trying to fill in some of those gaps left by the absence of some of these main players. But I think that they're doing a good job. Obviously, the Prometheus introduction was a pretty good solid bad this season, and I think that I would have liked to have seen a slightly more comic accurate Prometheus, but this is a guy who is taking on the entirety of the Justice League. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense to make him as OP as he is in the comics. But then it kind of just makes him like he's Dark Arrow #2. He's Malcolm Merlin dose, and I think that that's a little bit of a misstep. But again, they've done and they've balanced this season pretty well. Eric is right about Supergirl though. Supergirl, the first season, I actually only watched the first few episodes of the first season until it was done, and then I basically binge marathoned it before the second season, and I was very impressed towards the end of the season. They did things in the first season that I thought were well done, and obviously the introduction of like Martian Manhunter and things like that were well done. But I think the second season, we talked about this at the beginning of the season, Eric, and we even talked about it before it aired on the CW. But this kind of CW effect, obviously being able to bring them in a multi-part a multi-part crossover. I thought, although the multi-part crossover wasn't perfectly executed, the fact that they had the ability to do it and kind of give you this general idea of a larger cohesive universe or multiverse was, I thought it's been well done, and Supergirl has definitely come into its prime in its second season. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a significant improvement. We talked about Powerless at length, and I won't get into that. I haven't caught it yet. As far as Gotham is concerned, I've only caught a few episodes of Gotham since the Jerome thing. The show hasn't held my interest. I think it's done well. When it's great, it's a really good show. No one's questioning that the show is well made. It's well made. It's well acted. I think that it's well designed. It's a beautiful show. We talked about it when the show first came on. Bruno Heller he's a phenomenal show creator, and it's so disappointing to me that this show isn't better. He was a guy behind HBO's Rome, and I believe it was CBS's The Mentalist, which were just two of my favorite shows. So I was very disappointed that Gotham just didn't bring the same excellence that those two shows did. And it's a thematically different animal, I guess is the best way to put it. It's a whole different animal, and I think that maybe he bit off more than he could chew, trying to find a cohesive way to juggle the multiple stories. How do you bring in all of the elements that make Gotham City what Gotham City is, while Bruce Wayne is a boy, without then bringing in all of the problems of, okay, you have all of these villains and you're developing all these characters before Batman is Batman. And, one of it's not really talked about. I mean, I'm sure we've probably mentioned it, and I'm sure other people have mentioned it in reviews and just talking about Gotham in general, but it's always kind of this behind the scenes dialogue that sometimes comes up amongst not only villains but even heroes, in that a lot of Batman's villains are kind of a product of Batman. They're kind of a product of Batman being Batman. It's not dissimilar to the idea that they talk about in, say, the second Avengers movie. It's like, this strength breeds conflict conversation is you're going to have people who are going to want to fight against the Batman. The Batman is in itself a kind of a crazy concept, and so it's going to breed its own form of craziness. You kind of lose that element, which is always just behind the veil of the stories of Batman. You kind of lose that with Gotham. It's I think that there's something there that is a little bit ethereal that they're not quite nailing on the head. And like I said, the show's well acted, but it's the show's well designed. It's well made. It's well directed. It's well shot. The sets are gorgeous. I mean, the show does give. Me and Eric were actually talking about it earlier this weekend in terms of, they shoot in New York, but it's decidedly not New York that we see on screen through the help of not only CG, but the way that they shoot the show. And, they definitely do a really good modernistic take on a semi-realistic, believable Gotham. So there's all these elements there that just mean that the show should do well. It just doesn't seem to gel in the same way that some of the other I'm sorry, not CW, but Warner Brothers DC properties do. And as far as Lucifer, I think I've caught maybe 2 or 3 episodes over the entirety of the season. I agree with Eric 100% on this. And we talked about it from the get-go. It's also one of my favorite recurring jokes on Supernatural, which they've dropped maybe 2 or 3 times, which is the idea of, Lucifer's going to move to LA and solve crimes, or, Lucifer solving crimes is kind of just this ridiculous, funny concept. And although it's not ridiculous on its face, it is kind of ridiculous on its face, although it's not the worst idea conceived. Obviously the procedural is a successful formula. When you bring in the supernatural elements of Lucifer and you try to tie it to the gritty realism or the naturalistic realism of a police procedural, you kind of lose something of both of those elements. My favorite police procedurals are ones that add an element of uniqueness to them that isn't present in the myriad police procedurals that exist. So it's one of the reasons that although Mentalist was kind of a police procedural, I thought it was the fact that you had Patrick Jane the Mentalist, being what is essentially a fake psychic, but he's a self-admitted non-psychic who just uses his ability to read people as a way to solve crimes or help him solve crimes. Very smart guy. Or Elementary or Sherlock. These shows tend to be, I think, a step above because you're introducing this unique element. I think that Lucifer had the ability to maybe add that unique element, but it just was so off kilter and so off the base of what a police procedural should be, that it's kind of failed in that concept. And with the this really long comic book mythos behind it that they're only touching on in the show because it just doesn't work. And I understand that it won't work, but in a show like that, it makes it kind of destined for failure. If I feel like I'm rambling, but I feel like I'm hitting my point, and nonetheless, it's I feel like it's definitely failing in some conceits of the original idea of the show and of the original comic that it's derived from. So I'm gonna go with the Flash. Like I said, I think it's the strongest of the DC shows. I think it's been consistently the best in its now 3rd season. I think it's been consistently the best of all of the series. Me and Eric have talked previously that there are certain shows that oh, I didn't mention Legends of Tomorrow. Legends of Tomorrow is very hit or miss, and Eric kind of hit the nail on the head on that as well, which is, the show is very parabolic in its quality. It kind of has some big strengths, and then it has some really, really tepid episodes. It has some really, really weak narrative over the course of the season. It does do the Bill and Ted thing, which is they constantly are having to try and make the show interesting by introducing these popular characters. That idea isn't in and of itself a horrible idea, but I've found that, in my opinion, whenever you're in a show where you get to play with time, the absolutely best way to do it isn't necessarily to introduce famous characters throughout history, famous people throughout history, rather, but is to frame the show within the constraints of a famous event, something that has happened that kind of marks it as a place in time. People find resonance in that, and I think that would maybe be a stronger way to do it. They've done it a few times in the show.
It's getting old quickly, though, like them teaming up with historical figures. Like, get this week on Legends of Tomorrow, they're going back in time to team up with President Eisenhower's Undersecretary of Agriculture.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it is getting a little bit ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest. Yes, the creator of whatever, Google or Yahoo or Amazon. Yes, these people are billionaires. Stephen Hawking, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. Yes, these people are historical figures now because they've created these gigantic things and corporations and ideas. But in all, their lives are relatively mundane. I mean, these people were doing phenomenal things, but it's not like they were, going to space. It's not like they were part of some gigantic adventurous storyline. And I feel like it's a failure of, bringing in these characters consistently. President Eisenhower's Undersecretary of Agriculture. Yeah, I just think that they would be better off doing what I said, which is kind of playing on the idea of putting them within the constraints of a historical incident more than a historical. If for example, the Chernobyl incident, or the Manhattan Island, I believe it is, or I'm losing my 3 Mile Island, is it? Yeah, 3 Mile Island. You could do some interesting story within, okay, it was a supervillain who actually did this, and they were there when it happened, or maybe them being there led to the event, as the way that time travel shows tend to go. That would be an interesting thing. It's an event that everybody knows. Everybody knows that. Internationally, even people might not necessarily, they might know who Steve Jobs is, obviously, but it doesn't hold the same type of weight, I would say. But yeah, also, you get this idea that people that they are not only involved in those events, but maybe responsible, or that even that they've caused those events to happen. And like I said, the way that they play with time travel is kind of, the idea of like, if it happened, it's always happened kind of thing. They don't necessarily do that specific form of time travel, but it is a popular conceit that they do in time travel shows. So I think it would be a useful way for them to go moving forward.
There's also just such faulty logic with it. Because you see, over on The Flash, Barry goes back in time and saves his mom, and it messes up everything. The Legends kill people in the past every week, and nothing happens. I mean, right. when you kill someone in the past, no matter how bad of a person they are, you killed their grandchildren, their great-great-grandchildren, and who knows what great things these people would have gone on to do. And then I think it might have been Mark Guggenheim or someone who said in an interview, basically, it was something like, to paraphrase, it was just, we just choose to ignore that. It's like I'm sorry, you can't have it both ways. It's maddening.
Yeah,
But
it's a
else,
consistent point on that show that brings frustration to people who watch it. And it's like one of the biggest frustrations of watching The Flash is Barry, stop messing with the timeline. It's kind of like an internet joke. It's a consistent internet joke, especially amongst people who watch the show. Even it's even become kind of memeified to the point that people who don't even watch the show get the meaning, get the point. It's like, yeah, go back and fuck up the timeline. While simultaneously, yeah, the Legends of Tomorrow, they're kind of talking about the ramifications of messing with time, and that they are specifically going back with the intention of not messing with time. But it constantly reminds me of it was a short story where someone wanted to go back and hunt dinosaurs or something like that, and they fall and they mess up a blade of grass off of this protected walkway, which is supposed to keep them from disturbing anything in the past. And then when they get back to the present, they find out that like literally like language has changed. Like that English is no longer English, and like obviously that's very chaos theory vision of time, and it's a fun trope to play with in terms of time travel stories. But like Eric said, I mean, they've done this in several shows. They've done it in The Flash. They've done it in Supernatural. They've done it in several other. I know that they did it on the Vampire Diaries, for God's sakes. They've done it on several other shows where whenever you have like supernatural elements or science fiction elements where they have the ability to go back in time, that's always one of the constants. Is the idea, if you go back in time and you shoot some stranger, yeah, okay, well, what happened? Was that guy never going to have children? You just killed an entire. If you save the Titanic from sinking, now what happens? All those people might have completely changed the future that would have survived. And so it definitely is a point of contention. I tend to look past. I'm not an absolute purist when it comes to things like that. You have to give them a little bit of leeway in terms of, I mean, because like I said, you could go as hard-lined as possible and say like, well, no, they didn't exist in the past. So if they literally stepped on a blade of grass in the past, they would change time through the chaos butterfly effect or whatever you want to call it. And therefore the future would be different, regardless of whether or not they didn't change big things. And you could get as loose as to say, like, no, they went back in the past and anything that happened actually happened because they were technically there in the past. So the future is representative of that past that they've gone back to and have changed. And that's hyper confusing for people who don't like time travel stories. But you could have it literally either way, where it's like anything that they did was always intended to happen, or anything that they do is going to completely and irrevocably change the future. So I think it's a fine line, but it's malleable nonetheless if you're going to tell a science fiction story. But we're running up on the end, so let's tell you what. So Arrow for Eric and The Flash for me, our favorite shows. Let's talk about that Justice League trailer. Eric, what'd you think?
Yeah, we're running up on the hour, so we're only going to touch on this briefly, as we said. So I thought it was a very impressive trailer. I mean, I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that it's the greatest movie of all time, like staunch purist fanboys are going to. I mean, purist isn't the right word. I'll go back to saying the totalitarian ones, like I did in our previous episode. But it's very visually impressive. I mean, we don't get a sense of a hint of plot other than Batman's rounding up the League and they're fighting parademons. But what's there is pretty entertaining. Zack Snyder again shows it's visually impressive. I mean, just those little touches, we've seen of Batman standing on a gargoyle. I've liked that. Also, from the promo material this week, raises the question: does Batman have 3 costumes in this movie? Because we have one that's not too alien from what we saw in Batman versus Superman. Then we have this, more armored suit that people were calling Night Owl, and then we have this, inversion of color where we have a black suit with the gray bat on the chest, and I'm thinking, they're really going to sell some toys with this movie. I mean, you don't have to leave all the color swapping to the toy company, as long as they don't give us ridiculously colored suits like some of the toys have, like say the mustard colored Batman from the Dark Knight Rises toy line, or the gray suit with glitter on it. I think will be good. But yeah, it was a lot of nice character beats, I'll say. It looks like the team interacts well and has good chemistry, but so far, I will say the show stealer's Aquaman. I mean, we know Batman's going to have that appeal. I love Ben Affleck as Batman, and I'm sure he's going to kick lots of ass in this movie. But Jason Momoa as Aquaman is really stealing the show, and I think it's even if this movie, say, doesn't do as well with audiences, like people still, who didn't like Batman versus Superman would still say, oh, Ben Affleck was a good Batman, Gal Gadot was a good Wonder Woman. You could still have people saying, oh, that was a cool Aquaman. I'll see a movie with him. And I think Jason Momoa is really going to shut up people who make jokes about Aquaman, because a lot of people still see him as this guy riding around on a seahorse, and they know nothing about the character. But I mean, Jason Momoa brings this badass quality, but he also, a lot of people thought just because Zack Snyder has this penchant for using monochrome pictures and stuff in promo material, which I think he really needs to stop doing, because I mean, more colorful pictures are more eye-catching. But I mean, it made people think that Aquaman's going to be this very scary guy who talks like Nathan Explosion from Metalocalypse or something. And it's not quite as over the top as John DiMaggio's Aquaman from Batman the Brave and the Bold, but I really get this swashbuckling sense from Jason Momoa's interpretation. Like, he's a guy, he lives for battle. It might also kind of be the DCEU's answer to Thor, but it was just cool, like when he was riding on the Batmobile, he's like, yeah, and he's not hesitant to jump into battle and skewer parademons with his trident. It seems like there's a lot to love about this interpretation. Like I said, I don't necessarily think we're going to hear him shout huzzah, but there is kind of, the trailer after hearing me say this, there kind of is that John DiMaggio type quality to it, and I'm really looking forward to not just this, but seeing what he's going to do in his solo movie in 2018. But just that I'm not sure it was the wisest decision to leave Superman out of the marketing, because pretty much everyone knows he's going to come back, but it's really starting to look like the third act. And we've seen Henry Cavill tease the black suit on social media, and I'm telling you, he better have that mullet when he comes out of the grave. But, but the fact that they're leaving Superman out of the banners and the character posters and even this trailer, it is causing the average moviegoer to think Superman's not the movie, and that's you're on thin ice with that. They don't have to. I mean, they can show him punching out of a grave or something, or even just a snippet of him in trailer 2, which we're guessing will probably come at San Diego Comic-Con in July. But some people will say, oh no, they just gave away the whole movie. Again, we already know Superman's in it in some capacity. It'd be nice to at least get a snippet of Steppenwolf. I mean, it looks like he's going to be CGI, but it'd be nice to see something of him in a trailer, since it's already publicized he's the villain. But before I hand it over to Josh, I'm again going to say that if Justice League is not the hit WB wants it to be, and you used your only bullet in the chamber on Steppenwolf, I'm gonna be so pissed if Darkseid never gets his movie. And I'm just hoping that there's going to be some third act surprise, and Darkseid is in fact the big bad of this movie. So there's going to be a lot to read about between now. So we'll see. So what did you think of the trailer, Josh?
I mean, the trailer was a sizzle reel and a half. I thought the trailer was fantastic. Granted, there was a pretty phenomenal trailer for both, not only the Man of Steel. There was a phenomenal trailer for Batman versus Superman. The audience perception of those was pretty mixed. So, although I liked both of those movies, I would say that a trailer does not necessarily. I mean, like, I believe it was the original teaser for, like, say, Superman Returns or something like that. It wasn't the full first trailer. I mean, that trailer was one of the best trailers I've ever seen. It makes that movie look like it would be the best Superman movie ever. And although it was a good movie, it didn't have, it just didn't have the phenomenal quality that the trailer in and of itself had. So I would say that, it's not the be all end all having a phenomenal trailer that a movie is going to be great. I will say this, though, it does look great for what it is. Aquaman does look like the brash badass that I was hoping he would be. Although I wish he was a little bit more characterized like the badass Aquaman that we saw since the New 52. I kind of would like to see him be a little bit maybe like the Aquaman that we saw in Justice League War, where, it's kind of, I want him to show up and be like, who's the leader of this group? I vote me. Like, I want that level of confidence / arrogance out of Aquaman, because he's the leader of the Seven Seas. Maybe he's never fought anyone who was a worthy opponent before. I kind of like the idea that he's a total badass. I mean, obviously he's, choking Bruce Wayne up against a wall. So, there's no question that he's a big, tough alpha. I love the fact that, you might be cool, but you're not Aquaman riding the Batmobile cool. Jumping into battle in tridenting, 3 parademons. I like the fact that he seems like almost like the male version of Wonder Woman that we've seen. This is a out and out warrior who has no fear of battle and or maybe death, and will jump into it with little regard. I think that the awesomeness that we saw from, say, Wonder Woman in Batman versus Superman, I think that we're going to see something similar from Aquaman in this film, and maybe leaps and bounds above. Obviously, we're going to see some awesome Wonder Woman as well. I liked what we saw Cyborg. I thought it was very cool. I like everyone kept asking, why are there so many guns on the Batmobile? Because they're not fighting humans, and he's going to be fighting basically an alien force, is what everyone was suspecting. I will say with the whole Superman thing, everyone knows he's in it. Okay, not everyone's got their ear to the ground the same way that we do, so I do understand that there would be some people that wouldn't think that Superman's going to be in it. But if you've seen Batman versus Superman, at the end, you see the dirt rise above the coffin. Someone made a parody video about that with, the Unite, the League videos that they were releasing, the little teasers. And by the way, those teasers do have clips that are not in the actual trailer, like the phenomenal Batman gargoyle shot that they did. And we see that there were certain things in the original trailer that, hey, I hear you talk to fish, that trailer. We see a shot of the Flash that they redid and has extra CG with a parademon in it shooting at him. So, not all of that footage can be taken for what it is now, because we know that they've since changed it in post-production. So that would mean that some of this footage might not necessarily be completely finished. I know that there were some people who said that the CG wasn't perfect or the CG didn't look as polished. That could be because it's not completely finalized yet. I don't know that that's the case, but it's definitely possible. Yeah, I'm really hoping. I mean, here's the thing: I love Superman. Everyone knows that I love Superman who listens to this podcast, and knows me personally. And I am going to be really, really, really sad if basically, after a lackluster reception of Man of Steel, that the sequel to Man of Steel is basically a Batman and Superman movie that had a lot less Superman and Clark Kent than I would like, unless you saw the ultimate cut or the director's cut, and had basically Superman take a clean loss to, well, not a clean loss, but a loss nonetheless to Batman, rather than a draw, which we've talked about as well, and to only have in his third appearance have him basically show up at the end of the day, in the third act. I'm hoping he's in this movie a lot more. I'm hoping they're just using this as a marketing play to be like, oh yeah, by the way, Superman's in the movie. Like, I'm hoping that that's the case, but all of their promotional art, all their promotional posters, except the very first group shot, don't contain Superman. So maybe it's a decided marketing move, but I would like to see more of that. I kind of get, like, we've talked about it on the Junkies show, the idea of revealing way too much in the trailers. Like, they could have kept the Doomsday reveal for Batman versus Superman. They didn't have to reveal that in the trailer, or even the money shot of Wonder Woman. Although they had some promotional art, we don't necessarily have to see the very first appearance of the Trinity in the trailer rather than in the film. I'm kind of up and down about that. I kind of agree to one point and I don't to another, but I almost am tempted to say I would love to wait and see Superman in the movie rather than in the trailers. But again, from a marketing standpoint, if they think that Superman is marketable, then they're going to want to know that people, they're going to want people to know that he's in the movie. I mean, this is the reason that literally, if you've seen any of the new Spider-Man teaser posters, every single one of them has the Avengers tower in the background. Like, there's one where he's literally like on Avengers Tower. There's another one he's on like a road sign and with the Avengers Tower in the background. It's like, hey, by the way, it's in the Marvel Universe. Hey guys, we're in a joined universe, so please watch our movie now. Don't forget about the other Spider-Man movies. This one's in the same universe as the Avengers. Like, that's how it comes across to me. It's like they're really shoving it down your throat. And, when you've got way more Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man in the Spider-Man trailer than he will probably be. That's probably the majority of what he is in the movie. I mean, 10 seconds and a money shot at the end, of him flying with Spider-Man. Like, it's the same complaint that people have about DC and Batman, that they got to shove Batman into everything. And I don't disagree with that to a point. So that being said, I'm hoping that they think that Superman is still bankable and shove him into some of the promotional material. But nonetheless, a lot of people are saying exactly what I said when I first saw this trailer. It's fire. I mean, the thing is absolute fire. It's a phenomenal trailer. There are some people who are like, it's still dark. It's like, yeah, you have an alien force invading the planet, and most of it takes place in dark environments and or at night and or in a cave and or when there's fire and brimstone in the air. But that doesn't bother me. I mean, it's visually beautiful because it's Zack Snyder. But I thought that the trailer was absolutely spectacular. Again, it's not necessarily representative of how the ultimate movie is going to be. So, all right, wrap it up for us, Eric. I think that we've talked about everything that we're going to talk about, unless you had any other points to jump in on.
No, that's about it. We'll wrap it up here. I'm in April for another episode. We've been tossing around some ideas. We're thinking of doing a Riverdale episode with a friend of ours who's into Archie comics. So hopefully we can get that together. I kind of think the window has closed on us doing a Doctor Strange review. I did finally, I do own it on Blu-ray, but I haven't gotten around to watching it yet. I try to cram in my movies on the weekends when I have time, and I'm working my way through a stack right now. But never say never, I guess. Anyway, before we get out of here, I'll plug our links for all the latest DC news across all forms of media. Check out dccomicsnews.com. For our entire backlog of podcasts and other miscellanea, check out our blog site at multiverseentertainment.wordpress.com. Although it's not affiliated with this podcast, check out wegotThisCovered.com for all your entertainment needs. Check out our friends at culturejunkies.net, and be sure to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/a-podcast for all seasons. So until next time, thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Yeah, as always, thanks for checking out the show. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let us know what you guys thought about our comments about not only DC shows, but also that Justice League trailer in the comments on Facebook or YouTube. And we'll be back hopefully not too long from now with another episode. Have a good day.